what can you imagine, like if you gain an additional skill at a much earlier stage and your curiosity keeps increasing. So that's how you upskill yourself. So it's always up to people's interest. Maybe they want to have a clear focus in one particular field. There's nothing wrong with that. But what will always never change is as you upskill yourself, you will always be forced to pick up another extensive skill of your own.
Hello everyone, welcome in the 16th episode of the Mad Talk powered by Game of Pharma. Today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Prakash Kamaraj sir. Sir is the startup AI medtech innovator and also clinical research consultant. Welcome on the show, sir.
Thank you, Lokesh. Thank you, Salman. Yeah, it's been a long time, and it's nice to get in touch with you guys for the podcast. Excited to talk to you guys.
How has digital technology has changed after the COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, right? So if you look at it, it's more about how mobile you can be in terms of solving. By mobile, it's not just the mobile tech. It's about who will be the first responder for any particular problem statement, right? I think that is the most fundamental question, and it doesn't matter who's the first solver. It can be a doctor, it can be the government, right? So I think when it comes to a problem solving, I think digital technology has the fastest leverage because ultimately it's about information technology, right? Information technology, not how it is traditionally referenced in the Indian context. It's more about how fast can you move from point A to point B in terms of information leverage. And for the COVID literally accelerated that need for it. So when you have so much problems out there, it's about how much information you can pass from point A to point B. In this case, we need so much information had to be received on the government end and the people's end, right? These are the two main people. So if you look at it, digital health had to come up with so much innovations. And if you look at it, I mean, the first Aarogya setu app was developed by a Go Bibo lead engineer, right? So it doesn't matter where the solution comes from; it's about how fast you solve it. And doctors, as such, they are going to solve one-to-one problems. So, but ultimately, they're all humans. You need to help them concentrate on the most important patients at the first hand, right? So beyond that, how do you streamline the process? I think that's where digital health comes in handy. And the number of innovations are, I think even if you have the current Omicron wave ongoing, but it's always going to be digital health is always a must in terms of adding technology so that you don't overburden the healthcare workers. I think that's where I've also had a lot of experience interacting with folks in the digital health sector and medical technology industry. I think that's where the innovations has come up trump, and the need to solve a lot of problems has increased drastically in the past 2 years or so.
When we talk about digital health, it's something that keeps on renewing every day, every week. So, do we have any emerging trends in digital health?
In terms of emerging trends, it's I think if it depends on from which angle you look at it, right? When you have so much problem to solve, one is I think if you look at upcoming research from the Indian health sector perspective, they're coming with a really good stack of Indian National Health Record Registry. I think that's going to be a game changer because digital identity is very important. The payments and everything that comes later, it's necessary, and we have so much payment options to make sure there is lesser friction between the government stakeholders and the patients who are coming to get the problem solved. But I think the most compelling problem that needs to be solved is the digital identity in terms of health records. So I think that's where it stands out. So whether it's recognized as a trend or not, I think it's going to be a dramatic solution in the Indian health sector. So when you have the National Health Registry coming on, I think it's going to solve a lot of problems. Like Aadhaar took years to come solve it, but it's almost like it's like a very good base layer in terms of your digital identity. I think there's not a single place where they don't ask you an Aadhaar, regardless of government change. That has been a very effective solution. With the rise of COVID, I think the next step is going to be the digital health stack for each individual. I think a lot of developments are coming up front, like on that end. I think if you do your own research, any particular student, you can read upon it. What is the National Digital Health Stack mission? And you can also Google a bit more about NDHM. I think that is one of the where it's not restricted to just anyone who wants to collaborate with the government. You can also be a developer of sorts. If you want to build some cool stuff, you can just learn coding in any matter of time, or you collaborate with a coder, and you can always do your own project that can contribute to the national digital health stack. So that is the upcoming innovation that's going to change in the next couple of years.
Many startups and health tech companies are coming on. So like from this, like patients demand is also evolving day by day. So this medical technology is like able to meet the patient demand which are currently evolving.
In terms of meeting demand, it's always about evolving, right? If you look at the overall health status, it's a health sector cannot always run at max capacity. Like for example, you cannot account. I mean, this is true for any country, not just India, right? So if you look at any health tech, it cannot be accounted for the entire population. That's just not possible. It's because at any given time there is always an average, a moving average of how many people can be attended to at any point of time. And you have, because you have so much resource constraint, and of course real estate constraint is also there. Because even if you try to scale beyond what is the moving average, from a business point of view, a lot of hospitals cannot run. That I think you, even in the current COVID scenario, that is also possible. We have seen that even some of the smaller hospital setups are not able to meet the demands, and they are also not able to scale well. So looking at that, there is always a constraint from any national perspective. So there is always going to be that single moving average of how you meet the demand. So having said that, it's always the tech innovation has to concentrate on how do you solve that moving average. So once that is figured out, I think the next step is how the tech can solve everything in terms of meeting the demand of patients. So when it comes to that, there is so much thing to do, right? You have communicable disease, non-communicable disease. So non-communicable disease is something that doesn't scale beyond a point. It's always a gradual moving slope, like diabetes, hypertension. It's almost like a sine wave. It doesn't spike beyond a particular point. But when it comes to infectious disease, there's always a potential spike, and there needs to be a lot more innovation that coming every now and then, right? I think that's how these two are interlinked. And I think the lot of demand and supply, I mean, demand is in infectious disease is a lot more problematic because it needs a lot of research from the life science research. And especially with COVID, there is so much variables thrown. I mean, you look at the entire world is making research. So there is not enough manpower to actually to know everything in a single point because it keeps evolving. Right? That's the nature of the virus. So to keep up with that, there is always needs to be a constraint. I think that it is a good problem to solve because there has to be so much attention to it from every person, stakeholder possible, not just business folks. Needs to be so much attention. So that's why there's been an upcoming demand in terms of research in this particular field. So now I think the research interest is rising. Even if you look at Twitter, almost every single person is an epidemiologist of his own. They make their own research, which is good to see, because even if they're right or wrong, I think it is important to see at least they take the first step. I think that awareness needs to be there. So once the awareness evolves, I think we will be really good proponents of managing our own health. I think that is should be the, if you look at the technology that is solving the demand, it's about first creating the awareness and making sure that the right information reaches the right people and they can solve their own problems. I think that is the most crucial aspect of the demand and supply that we are discussing. So at the moment they are meeting, yes, but there's always scope for improvement because the awareness and the people's behavioral change takes a lot of time. So in India, it's evolving, and I think we'll be on the right path in the coming years.
After MBBS, you done MTech from IIT Kharagpur. What is the motivation behind it, sir?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always kept asking a lot. And it was not even MTech. Like it was a 3-year course. Like it was trained to be a proper PG course. So we did 2 years of coursework, and then you have 1 year of like master thesis kind of sorts, where we do a 1-year project in itself. So my experience was between 2015 to 18. I think before I took that step, I think the first thing that excited me was to be a problem solver of sorts. So being a medical person, you're already a problem solver. The only problem for me was, I think I just took a self-assessment. Like, okay, I'm more of a one-to-many solver than a one-to-one solver. That was something that was always on my mind. So I think then I always assess myself, so what can be the best leverage of my own skills. So I was a lot more curious even during med school in terms of tech and everything. And another thing is another underrated aspect. This is it go to any medical student who wants to, right? It's always better to have two particular skills, right? So you have to leverage your base skill that your home base will never go out of fashion, right? Your medical practice always going to remain, and that is how your undergraduate kind of resonates, right? The second step is what is the additional skill that you can continue to keep building and continue to keep learning, because as medical students learning is always set by default. You're always learning something or the other every day, but you also have to have a realistic look at how many people are along with you, and are you can you supplant their skills on top of it, because ultimately when you plan your career at when you're like beyond 10 years, 15 years, it's always about how you tally among your peers. So I think that is also important. So to me, I took a self strong call. I think it was a more of a self discovery call, you could say. And I feel that my motivation was to be a builder of sorts. So in terms, I chose medical technology as my path, and of course, I think it has paid off pretty well, because I think my passion to keep learning in the medical technology still keeps evolving, and I think that is the core takeaway that I tell any young medical student who wants to succeed, right? Because it's not just about medical practice; it's about what additional skill that you have. Because even the most successful practitioners, it's all about what leverage they have over the other people. And it doesn't need to be leverage over the other people. It can always be collaborative. You cannot succeed without just being competing against your peers. You also have to be collaborative of nature, and even the best practitioners in the field do that. So to me, I did see both of the skills as separate, be it medical practice or medical technology. But being in the other tech side of things, it's always better to give the right sort of understanding to the people who are actually building medtech, right? You don't see a lot of doctors in the medical technology field. There are a few, but I think that number is sufficient enough to help scale a lot of problems that is happening. So I think, yeah, that was the first motivation. I think the motivation has to be real game changer for any young aspirant, right? Because so I think that's the one takeaway that I'll tell any medical student. You have to figure out what's the extra leverage that you can bring to the society. What problem are you solving? So yeah, that was the first step. I chose medical technology, and I've come quite a long way. And the learning never stops. I think that's always the first takeaway.
Since you have a unique combination of different skill sets and education, so can we call your profession as a hybrid profession?
Yeah, that's exactly. I think to give a bit background of the course that I did at IIT Kharagpur. So that particular course was designed by one of the stalwarts. I mean, he's not often well spoken, and he also got awarded the Padma Shri just Padma Vibhushan, if I'm not wrong, the last year. So he was a person who did engineering first and then did medicine. That is some even more rarer combination. Not a lot of people do that. In the West, you might find a few examples, but he was someone who did the most difficult. To me, that's more difficult because your first undergraduate defines your difficulty in terms when you switch careers, and that was his inspiration. And he basically, I mean, he was in IIT Delhi for a while, and he actually pitched the program to Abdul Kalam himself, and that's how the course got born. And in 2002, and I think it was inaugurated by Manmohan Singh and Abdul Kalam, and they were present. And yeah, that's who's so the founder of the course was basically someone who did engineering first and then medicine. So for those who are curious, probably you can Google him. So I'll leave that name to those who want to be curious of this episode, right? So I think if they're able to find, I think they'll have learn a lot about how this particular hybrid course came into evolution, and it's still a very successful course because it's open only for people who completed medicine. So I think so the takeaway from this is it is hybrid course because the first person who did that himself. So he did it the other way around, and he wanted to do that inspirational model for medical doctors who want to be builders, right? So I think that was the most inspirational journey for me before I even took the course. So that journey resonated so much with me. I felt like if the engineers out there in the world are able to solve so much problems, why can't we solve a lot of problems being medical professional alone? It's not necessary that we'll have to solve only by practice. We can always solve by doing a lot of inspirational inventions
By
and so
innovation.
on.
So when we talk about evolution in medical treatment, we get a very common word. Got to hear the point of care treatment. What exactly is that point of care treatment? And what are the promising advancements you see in the point of care treatment?
So point of care, it's all about how mobile you can be, like the aspect I explained earlier, right? So it's about like when you look consider diagnostics, they are traditionally they are regarded as point of care. When a person comes to a diagnostic center, he comes with a problem. So what are the problems you can solve on that spot? I think that's the most basic point of care technology that you can think of. So all your blood standardized tests, which are kind of commoditized, are called as point of care. It starts with a blood test, starts with screening tests. So everything is point of care. So these things which can be outsourced to a particular allied agency, right? Like which the standard doctor would not have the infrastructure for, or all point of care technology. So but in today's world, the definition has changed a lot because point of care can also refer to the information technology. So information technology is the entire digital health middleware that has come up, right? So even the digital health contribute towards the point of care technology, like because when you come up with a lot of testing technologies and inventions, all of them need to interface on a specific point. Like if they interface on a digital health middle stack, it's much easier for the patients to interact with the digital health information record, right? So in my opinion, I think even a digital health stack, national digital health stack, can be a point of care. Point of care in terms of how effectively they solve, right? So it's not just about the tech, diagnostic tech that you see as a point of care. In modern definition, how it's going to be come up with how do you leverage the digital health to make sure that it affects the people. So let's consider a unique scenario. Like you go to today's testing, and usually they give you 48 hours to come back and get your results, right? So this is a different style of point of care. But what if you can leverage an information where you don't need to come back? You're trying to solve for convenience, and you come back. Your test results get updated on whatever mobile tech that you're having. So that is also another point of care trend that is upcoming now, and this is also leveraged by any service that you come across. Give you a short example. So one of the companies that I work for, it's called Forest Health. So what they do, they are currently doing is how do we solve for convenience, right? There is so much uh, problems in the industry that the patients don't come back because I think if you have noticed, the attention span is fragmented so much, and how do they take care of their own health? That is a big problem. You might come, and when you're told that you're having a problem, your tendency to come back is very much fragmented. You won't do that. You'll rather watch Netflix and watch all sorts of non-essential things and attend to your own health when you're told something is wrong with you, right? People don't want to be told that they have a problem, so that fear is always there. So how can you solve that? If you solve for convenience, and then I think people will always respond, even if it's their own health. I think this is how the emerging point of care technologies can come into play. So the tech that is being solved by companies like Forest is what the next step is. When someone is being told that they have a problem, it could be from as simple as early diabetes risk, which can evolve into diabetic retinopathy, and the compliance rate is only 30 to 35%. So the next point of care innovation is going to be about what if you can actually solve it by doing a home-based checkups, right? Home-based checkups is the next evolution of point of care. So when they are told they have a problem, so the next step would be having a service aspect where the healthcare provider themselves through multiple stakeholders to come from the pharma industry themselves. So if they are contributing to the logistic of taking that particular tech to the home, that is the next point of care that you'll be looking at. So I'll give you another example. So what is I think I'm sure you guys know about Swiggy, right? Swiggy, Zomato, they're the most popular. I mean, with the IPOs, it's even more harder to not recognize them. And you look at the next trend that is coming, Zepto. Zepto is a 10-minute delivery service. So it's not always 10 minutes, but it's coming up with a whole innovative logistic that they're having a logistic that is much faster than Swiggy and Zomato. So this could be the next scaling solution, right? At the end of the day, because they are solving that a very important problem, because people want convenience. I don't care if and if you look at the Twitter reviews, there are always people, okay, I don't care about 10-minute delivery, but I want 10-minute treatment. I want 10 minutes medicine delivery. So this is the next trend that is upcoming. So imagine if you can solve all that, you come up with tech that can actually contribute to this logistics. That is the next point of care that you can be looking at. So yeah, I think coming to the points about there are so much problems to solve. It comes about what problem that you are passionate about, and then you can. Lokesh says that he's from pharma industry, right? So there is the pharma industry that he works for will always be looking at what sector that will be solving. So the next will be like what point of care that you can solve for convenience, because convenience is going to be a big plus in the digital health industry. I think that's the value offering that we offer to the people of the nation, right? So how much of is convenience plus an important need that you're solving? I think that will be the next big game changer in terms of point of care technologies. So I think that will be my takeaway in terms of point of care technologies, apart from the traditional ones, where it's just not just about going to a lab and getting yourself tested or treated. So those are the traditional ones. But the upcoming ones it's about how you can solve for convenience while sitting at your own home. What are the maximum information and authentic information you can get from the regular, the treatment stakeholders. It's not just about practo teleconsultations. It's also about how much tech that you can bring in and solve for convenience to the each patient who come to the healthcare sector.
You are already expert in these technical as well as medical facilities. So how do you see that the technology is going to bring changes in our basic design of the medical facility in India?
I think I would recommend. I wouldn't say name. There are a lot of problem startups doing this, but I'll just give a very good basic example of the use case. Right. Usually, what happens is when someone doesn't know what to do, like when they are scattered with information overload, and what they do is the first thing that they do is they go to the most known hospital. The known hospitals are as a result of mass advertising and like mass lobbying. You can say that there's a lot of factors. There is nothing wrong with that. Each business wants to survive, on their own to make money for themselves. That is always there, because that is important. You to be successful in this world, you need to make sure there is a money stream for it. So like money stream can become from very noble causes. That's nothing wrong with that. So in this case, there's always going to be a money stream for the bigger hospital. So what happens is the bigger hospitals always succeed. They always get the max outflow. It's not just local patient flow, it's also people coming from neighboring states or neighboring countries. So if you look at some big hospitals, they get so much influx from abroad as well. So because the care in India is much efficient and cheaper compared to the countries that are abroad. So that is one factor. The only problem is it gets tapped into all the bigger facilities. But what about the medium to smaller efficient? They're also equally efficient, if not even better in some cases. You might never know. And that is how do you manage the traffic to these hospitals? I think that is the most important problem that will always exist, because you cannot escape the mass advertising of the major hospitals that are there, right? I think there also needs to be traffic diverted to the basic cares as well, basic point of care. But by point of care in this context, I mean the small clinics who are well enough to equipped to solve a lot of medical emergencies, or even moderate to long-term emergencies like surgeries that are planned. So it's about how do you divert the traffic. I think that is the next step. There are a few startups that are doing this. People can do their own research if they can come up with that.
Like we are talking about the startup, there are many small startups which are coming with a great idea, and also the Google and Amazon also become a part of the healthcare, like right now, like everyone is starting the service of the pharmacy and all. So sir,
Got
who
it.
is gonna be bring the most like most advancement in the healthcare, like small startups with a great idea, or the Google or Amazon with their technology?
Usually, I think you have noticed that I refrain from names because each startup have their own recognition, right? But it's a very important question in terms of how well, like I'll tell you, even whether you're Google or Amazon, you cannot solve all problems. There are a lot of examples even from big companies. They think that just because they're a big corporation with big revenue model, the problem solving has to start from 0 to 1. So if the journey didn't start from 0 to 1, top down approach is not always going to win. So this is something the Amazons and Googles, they know that. If you look at the problem solving trends in Google, right, I think they have never turned their back at healthcare for 20 years, if you look at it. And they always have find ways to make inroads. And I think their current strategy is pretty good because they are looking to collaborate with a lot of startups. Because if you look at logistic companies like even Dunzo, the delivery companies, they also get financed by these big corporations, right? So imagine if you're a really good startup and you're actually using their services very efficiently than they could have thought of. That comes from a problem of observation, strong leverage that you have found with your domain knowledge. So domain knowledge is very important, and it comes with being in the domain for quite a bit of time. It can take 2 years or it can take 5 years. You never know that. But a startup being having spent time in this, I think that's the biggest leverage that you can have over the bigger corporations. So I think the best trends or the upcoming startups will be the ones who solve this problem, right? So they solve the problem of logistics. They might even get funded by this bigger corporation. They might even get acquired. So there are multiple ways to look at it. So all the business things aside, I think it's about how effectively you solve in a way that they have not thought of. Because top-down approach is the most difficult. You might have all the money, but imagine if this is an easy problem to solve, it would have been done already. They have all the money in the world. What's stopping from them? What's stopping Apple to do their own healthcare business? Because they know it's a big risk. It's a big risk when you don't have the 0 to 1 approach, you cannot succeed. So this is the problem that smaller startups they have an advantage, right? So if they have the time and dedication to solve a particular problem from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 2, I think that is the most important for any startup to recognize. So we have a lot of examples, but there is always a case of there is no one single winner, because there is you have the big corporations at one end. They are going to act as hospital chains. That's not going to be the one point of solution for everything. You need to have medical technology startups for each domain, so that there is enough problems to be solved that these Googles and Amazon, they don't need to think about solving these problems. I think that is where the future is going to be.
So, would you like to convey any specific suggestions for the viewers to begin their profession in such tech fields and innovative fields, especially?
Okay, that's a good one. Um, so I think it ultimately, fundamentally boils down to what upskilling you want to do. So each person has their own interest. It's always good to answer your own inner calling. So that is very important first. So tech is secondary. It's always not the only way to solve problems, right? You can go to different walks of life. You can be an efficient marketer, or you can be an efficient, or you can be an efficient problem understander, right? That itself is an underrated skill. So when you have the domain knowledge, when you want to upskill yourself, you go to people who lack the specific leverage. So in my case, I go to people who lack the specific leverage of the domain knowledge of the medical field. So that's how I started. Then once you understand tech, you gain much more skills. Then I come from a leverage of people who understand both tech and medicine as well. So that is my next leverage. So it keeps evolving. So, and I think that's important to recognize. It's about to answer your first inner calling in terms of what is the first leverage that you can address. So, what is the next skill that you can learn? So, it has to match your interest. Otherwise, it's very hard to scale. So, once you have done that, I think the next step would be to just keep exploring as much as possible. We spend so much time doing a lot sorts of things. It's always important to address your motivation skill sets as well. So that's always possible, and I think that's more important. It's not just, it need not be coming from just tech. It can come from so much research, user research, so much problem solving, right? I think uh, that's what should be most important things to be addressed. And I'll give you an example. So I'm one of the strong proponents of this problem, of this particular biodesign program. Which is run by AIMS Delhi. You can read this book. You can either buy this book or you can find other ways to get the book. The book is called Biodesign. So the Biodesign has a really good playbook for anyone who wants to come with his own innovation or invention of sorts. So I can send you the link so that you can give it to your audience. That is the next thing. So the biodesign teaches you the basic skill set. It doesn't matter what background you're coming from, whether your core tech expertise is a designer or a doctor, or you can be from anything. But if you want to really invent strong medical technology, you have to start. There are really good fundamental process that you need to solve. The first thing comes from identifying the problem statements and need. So this is a really good playbook. I think I can say that it's very important in my own life. So that is very important to solve. How you solve it, it's up to you. It can always match your skill set, and then you can do it. So I think that will be the first takeaway that I give to the audience. So they have to be always curious in what domain they want to upskill themselves. Next is to have a really good problem solving strategy. That comes with time. That comes with speaking to important, interesting people, and always speak to people outside your domain whenever you get the chance. Because the more comfortable you get in your domain, the more less you have the chance of innovating yourself. Right? I think that's very important to understand. And I think these are the most important things that people should be addressing.
So thank you so much, sir, for your time. It's been a
Mhm.
great session, sir. And
Yeah,
like we learned a lot from this session, sir. Thank you so much.
sure. You guys are welcome. Yeah.